So now I have my tinder bundle to the side, and now I can really start to get into bow drill. So I'm going to pull my kit. So I have my bow drill kit together, and I have all my pieces. I'm ready to get into it. Every part and element of this whole process is really important, and there are just some little details, big concepts that we want to think about. So when getting started, you have your handhold, your fireboard, your bow with your string on it, and your spindle. Getting the spindle into the string is a funny hurdle in the beginning, and then you quickly don't even think about it. So I'll show you two ways that we go about it. For me, I like to hold my bow in my dominant hand, my spindle in my non-dominant hand, and I have this string facing towards me with the belly of my bow facing that said string, right? And I'm going to take my spindle where we have the long taper and the short taper, and I'm going to put the long taper down between the string and the bow, and I kind of use this finger to help guide it, and I catch the string. Notice how I'm holding the bow with my elbow on my hip, and I can take the top part of the spindle and the lower part of the spindle, utilizing leverage, and snap it into place. Get into position by holding it as such, and this is the way that works for me. So just quickly, I have the string here. It's going to go down, up, catch the string, and I'm going to pull from both ends. The way that Brad likes to show people is that he'll hold the bow in his non-dominant hand and spindle in his dominant hand, and he puts the spindle here underneath the string, and then he takes, if you were to make an L with your non-dominant hand, well, if you're doing this L and use your thumb and your pointer and you pinch that spindle, then all you have to do is twist it and then reposition it into your dominant hand, because you're going to be bowing with your dominant side. So to get started, I need to burn in a new socket, and I need to burn in this handhold. So with the spindle and the fireboard, I like to lay these two such that they're flush, and there's a flat plane right here. And I give it about 1/8 of a rotation in, and I lift up, and I make a mark into that wood, right? It's a low density wood. I can easily see my mark here. Ultimately, we want this socket to be about 1/8 to 1/4 inch in from the edge. If it's much further in, we have to end up carving a really large notch into that socket. And if it's really close to the edge, then when you carve that notch, sometimes you end up just busting through walls because they don't have a lot of support. So about 1/8 of a rotation in, about 1/4 or 1/8 of a quarter to 1/4 of an inch. And that is to be done with the short taper. The long taper is going to fit into your handhold. And I've simply taken my knife and, not holding it into my hand, right, and risk of cutting myself, I've taken my knife, I've placed this on the ground, and I've worked the tip of the blade in and around to create that cavity. I'm going to do the same thing right here. I'm not, but if I press it down on the ground, I can just rotate my knife a few times, and it's going to give me a cavity that I can easily sit that short and the long taper into. So I have the beginnings of burning in a socket for the handhold. I have the beginnings of burning in my socket into my fireboard. I can now get my spindle into my bow. Great. I'm ready to get going. So technique here, right? This is a simple machine that we want to work, and we really want to think about our body composition in relation to it. I want to make sure that my fireboard is placed on the ground in an area that's flat, and more so that this will not wobble. It's really important that this doesn't move, but has a comfortable position on the ground. So I'll place it, I'll check it, I'll put some weight on it, try and rock it, and oftentimes just small adjustments are needed. So I want to list through a number of things that you're going to want to think about. My board is on the ground. My foot is on my fireboard, right under the arch of my foot, very close to where my socket's going to be burned in. My foot is angled such that it's perpendicular to the fireboard. Small adjustment. And my dominant leg is right behind my heel, about the distance of my foot. You know, you're going to adjust for the landscape, but there tends to be about the distance of your foot between the heel on the board and the knee that's placed down on the ground. And my back leg, I'm usually either up on my toes or the ball of my feet to help balance out. I'm going to place that spindle into the fireboard in that notch that we started. And the same to be said with that handhold. I like it such that my arm comes to the outside of my leg and down and around. My non-dominant hand is going to be gripping that handhold. I want to be paying attention that my handhold isn't tilted, but that I'm able to exert force in line from my hand into that handhold, through the spindle, into the fireboard. My dominant hand is going to be the hand that bows. So I'm going to make sure to hold all the way on the back of my bow. If I hold in the middle, I don't get the longer strokes that are really important. I'm going to hold all the way on the back of my bow. And I want to be bowing by keeping the bow itself parallel to the ground. So just as you get started, find yourself in a comfortable position. That as an overall concept is really important. Comfortable and breathing. Breathe. A lot of people seem to do this by holding their breath or think they can. So make sure that you're breathing, and that you're comfortable, and make adjustments as you need. Get into position, feel everything out. And start bowing slowly. And as things are working well for you, continue to increase in speed, pressure, and duration. You'll hear us mention that a few times. So I'm ready to start bowing. I want to make sure I'm comfortable. And my non-dominant hand, I'm having it to the outside of my leg. I like to rotate my wrist in so that I'm getting maximum surface area from about like my mid forearm all the way halfway through my thumb. And what that does is help really solidify and lock in my wrist. So the wrist itself doesn't have a lot of musculature, and if it sticks out, some people are able to muscle it and maintain stability, but a lot of people wobble around. No good, right? So we'll talk about that more. I rotate my wrist in so this negative space fits into my shin bone, and I find that really helpful. I'm going to grab from the back of the bow. I'm going to maintain that it's parallel with the ground. And what I'm going to do right now, my only goal is to burn my socket in. Really burn 2 sockets in, right? So we're burning in our handhold and we're burning in that lower socket. That handhold tends to burn in first because it has so much more pressure. So the handhold's going to burn in, and then I just need to make sure that my socket in the fireboard is burned into the full circumference of the spindle. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay. So I can see it burned to the full circumference. That char is kind of coming up just above the edge of the spindle. And if I were to place it into the socket and just push side to side, it's not going to walk out. You can see I'm already making dust. That dust is like a perfect coal extender. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to knock that into my tinder bundle. Right? And right in that center. My handhold is burning in, and this is a depth that I'm comfortable with, but I usually have people who are doing this for the first time or new to it, and that they are going to burn it in a little bit deeper. So if you are new to this, I would suggest that you burn this in a little bit deeper, and that kind of allows you to get away with a little bit more movement in your handhold. There is a point of going too deep. Really important to consider. It makes it much more difficult, and we'll talk about that in troubleshooting. So I burned in my socket to my fireboard, full circumference of my spindle. I've burned in my handhold to a depth that works for me. So there's two things now ahead of me that I need to do. I need to carve my notch into my socket, and I need to add a little bit of lubrication to keep my handhold from burning in anymore and help this run more like a ball bearing. Smooth, let it glide, compress the wood fibers in the handhold, shred and rip them up on the fireboard. So for the handhold, I'm going to look around. I'm going to find some tree pitch, some dried resin, spruce. Sometimes you find these little dried bits off of balsam fir, etc. All of those are going to work. I really lean towards true tree resin over using any sort of green leafy material. You can get away with using like hemlock needles or any of the conifer needles in a pinch, but if you just look a little bit harder, you're more likely to be able to find resin, and that's going to do you much, much better. And that way you're not adding in moisture to the wood fibers. If you add a fair amount, it's going to feel gummy and a little sticky at first. Give it a couple of strokes. It's going to heat it up, and it's going to just relax, and then it's going to be so much smoother. It can really make a big difference. So we want to make sure that we treat our handholds well. And then I want to carve my notch into my socket. So my notch is going to come from this wall, and it's going to move in about, it's going to be about an eighth of that circle, just shy of center. So you carve your sockets. They're going to be an eighth of that socket, a pizza pie slice, cherry pie, and just shy of center. And I'll show you how I like to carve it in a way that's effective and safe.